Have you ever stopped to think that the story you were told in school might be just a small part of a much larger and older truth? What if I told you that, long before modern empires, there was a man in Africa who saw the future of humanity written in the stars and in the desert sands? Why was the name of this spiritual leader erased from official records? And what did the great powers of the past fear so much in his prophecies? Today, we will delve into the mystery of the last African prophet, a guardian of forbidden secrets who predicted the fall and rebirth of an entire continent. This is not just a story of kings and queens, but a revelation about a spiritual technology that connected deep Africa to the cosmos in a way that current science is only now beginning to understand. Prepare to discover how hidden symbols, rituals of silence, and connections to distant stars shaped the destiny of millions of people across oceans and centuries. If you feel there is something in your ancestry that has not yet been revealed, this video is the portal you've been waiting for to understand the true power of African wisdom. Before we reveal the first secret of this forgotten prophet, check if you're already part of our community of truth seekers. If you're not yet subscribed, take this opportunity to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our hidden journeys. And tell me in the comments, from which part of the world are you hearing this ancient story? It's an honor to have you with us on this journey back to our roots. Legend says that long before the sandy borders were drawn by the hand of man, there was a place where the wind not only blew but spoke. In the heart of a valley forgotten by trade routes, the earth seemed to breathe at a different rhythm, protected by mountains that touched the sky like giant fingers. It was there, in an isolation bordering on the sacred, that the destiny of Africa began to be shaped in the womb of an ordinary woman. The silence of that immensity was not empty, but rather filled with an expectation that made the animals bow. The caravans that passed in the distance avoided that quadrant of the desert, claiming that compasses there lost their minds, and time seemed to bend in on itself. In those hidden coordinates, the heat of the day and the biting cold of the night danced an eternal choreography on the reddish soil, rich in unknown minerals. It seemed that geography itself had been designed to hide what was about to be born, creating a natural fortress of rock and mirage. Whoever entered there without the permission of the spirits, the elders said, would never find their way back to the world of men. In this setting of absolute isolation, nature manifested signs that defied the logic of the wise men from distant cities. Springs of crystal clear water gushed from dry rocks at the exact moment the first star of the night appeared in the sky, as if the cosmos was celebrating an imminent event. The ancient and wise baobab trees seemed to incline their branches towards a small mud hut that blended into the very color of the earth. Everything around whispered a truth that official history was not yet ready to record or understand. The winds carried with them an aroma of myrrh and damp earth, even when the rains were months away from that arid region. It was a sensory mystery that enveloped every grain of sand, preparing the stage for the arrival of the one who would see through the veil of human ignorance. Birds of prey, which usually seek death, hovered in perfect circles, guarding the perimeter like winged sentinels of an invisible and ancient army. The air became dense, charged with a spiritual electricity that sent shivers down the spines of those who possessed the sensitivity to feel the sacred. Within that absolute simplicity, birth would not be merely a biological act, but an open fissure in the fabric of reality known to all. While the village slept under the mantle of an absurdly starry sky, the boy's first cry echoed, but it did not sound like that of an ordinary child. It was a sound that seemed to vibrate in the depths of the caves and on the tops of the highest dunes, as if Africa itself were breathing a sigh of relief. Little did they know that that small breath contained visions of empires yet to fall and secrets that the world would try to bury. Once upon a time, in a time when maps were drawn only by the stars, there was a hidden valley where the very horizon seemed to hold its breath. In those parts where the desert meets mystery, the wind didn't just blow. It carried secrets of an Africa that history books chose to ignore entirely. They say the soil there was so alive that it shone under the moonlight, guarded by mountains that seemed like giant sentinels of stone and silence. Indeed, in that almost sacred isolation, nature began to show signs that something extraordinary was about to happen, changing the course of the waters and the song of the birds. The oldest caravans avoided the place, swearing that time ran differently there, as if the past and the future were intertwined. It was a refuge of absolute peace, but charged with an electricity that made the hearts of the brave beat faster. Suddenly, springs of crystal-clear water gushed from dry rocks, and the scent of myrrh filled the warm air, even without a single flower in sight. The elders of the neighboring tribes felt the weight of an invisible presence that was beginning to occupy every grain of sand in that mysterious valley. It was the perfect setting for a revelation that the modern world would never expect, carefully prepared by the very spirit of the African land. The approaching birth was not merely the beginning of a life, but the opening of a portal between what is seen and what is felt in the soul. On that night, under an absurdly clear sky, the silence of the desert was broken by a sound that vibrated in the depths of the earth and atop the highest dunes. It was not an ordinary cry, but an ancestral echo that seemed to awaken memories dormant for millennia in every baobab tree. As the first light of day painted the sky gold and purple, the boy with dark skin and eyes as deep as the ocean breathed in the sacred air of that refuge. He carried a mark that only the initiated could read, a sign that his voice would be the channel for truths that many would try to erase. But even before he learned to speak, he already heard the whispers of a time that had not yet arrived, hidden in the shadows of a cradle made of clay and stars. Back then, Africa wasn't just a map, but a living organism where each empire pulsed like a giant heart brimming with wisdom. The boy grew in a clay cradle under the watchful gaze of the stars, while all around him civilizations flourished with a sophistication that would leave today's wise men speechless. It was a golden age where knowledge of metals and the land was treated as an intimate conversation between man and creation. But make no mistake, for beneath this surface of prosperity, the little prophet began to notice things that no one else saw at the festivals and harvests. While the leaders prided themselves on their palaces, the boy realized that true wealth lay hidden in the way the people connected with the invisible. He walked among the artisans and warriors, absorbing the essence of an Africa that was, at once, the beginning of everything, and the guardian of secrets that the modern world insists on calling myth. His journey was driven by a curiosity that couldn't be confined within the village limits, leading him to observe how the sun shone on the natural earthen pyramids. He saw that every daily gesture, from planting to forging iron, carried a spiritual weight that united heaven and earth in an indescribable way. It was a time of harmony, but a harmony that carried the weight of an ancestral responsibility that the world was about to test. Gradually, the young man began to understand that his role was not merely to experience that glory, but to be an eyewitness to a legacy that needed a guardian. He spent hours in silence, feeling the vibrations of the cities rising and falling, as if he could hear the sound of time passing through the roots of the trees. His skin seemed to absorb the heat of the earth and the light of the stars, transforming him into a living link between matter and pure spirit. However, this profound connection carried with it a burden that no other soul there seemed ready to bear at that historical moment. He began to see the invisible cracks that were beginning to appear in the great stone walls and in the hearts of the powerful. What seemed to be an era of eternal stability was, in fact, being prepared for a transformation that would come from within, from a lineage of guardians who guarded the secret of the original word. Indeed, this lineage was not merely a matter of blood, but of breath and word, passed down from ear to ear since the first man walked the earth. The young prophet discovered that he descended from the guardians of the word, beings who did not speak to convince, but to manifest reality before one's eyes. They were the keepers of stories that time cannot erase, guarding in their memories the star map and the recipe for life. Just imagine the responsibility of carrying in your heart the keys to knowledge that many kings would give their own crown to possess. He spent his afternoons under the shade of the baobab tree, listening to the elders who seemed made of the same wood as the tree, each wrinkle telling a secret of the cosmos. There he learned that words have weight and that silence is the soil where the deepest truth likes to germinate. His journey led him to understand that the word was not merely sound, but a vibration that kept empires standing and harvests plentiful. He saw how the chants of his ancestors were capable of calming storms and healing wounds that no medicine could touch. It was a spiritual science, a technology of the soul that made Africa the beacon of light guiding the rest of the world, still immersed in shadows. But carrying that flame demanded a high price, a commitment never to use that power for self-interest or gratuitous destruction. The prophet felt this energy rising through his legs every time he touched the bare ground, as if the earth were whispering the passwords of the universe in his ear. He became, paragraph by paragraph of his own life, the living book that no fire or invader could ever burn. However, being the heir to this oral tradition also meant being the first to sense when the world's balance began to dangerously shift. He realized that the sacred words were beginning to be forgotten by some, replaced by empty promises of immediate power and fleeting glories. Little did the young guardian know that, to protect this secret, he would have to undergo a transformation that would change even the sound of his own baptism. The day arrived when the young man had to prove that his soul was stronger than his will, undergoing the dreaded baptism of silence. In this ritual, which was not for just anyone, he was taken to the depths of a cave where the sunlight dared not enter. There, the noise of the outside world died away, and the only thing that remained was the sound of his own heart beating against his ribs. It was the moment to surrender his human voice in exchange for the ability to hear what the gods and the earth had to say. Imagine the tightness in his chest after spending days and nights without saying a single word, surrounded only by darkness and the smell of damp earth. The silence wasn't emptiness, but a dense presence, as if the rock walls were telling stories from eras no one remembered anymore. He felt every thought vibrate like thunder, learning that to hear the divine, one must first silence the noise of one's own ego. It was in this isolation that he realized that the Creator's voice doesn't speak through words, but through sensations and visions that burn the soul. During this initiation, the boy felt as if his throat was sealed by an invisible hand, transforming his silence into a tool of absolute power. He saw colors that did not exist in the real world, and heard the growth of plants and the movement of underground waters kilometers below him. It was a solitary journey, but he had never felt so accompanied by the spirits of his ancestors who guided him through the labyrinth of his mind. With each passing hour, fear gave way to a deep and chilling peace, preparing the ground for his new mission. When he finally emerged from that darkness, his eyes had a different gleam, as if they had captured a bit of the mystery of the depths. He no longer felt the need to speak to be understood, for his mere presence now carried the authority of one who had crossed the veil. The villagers recoiled in respect, realizing that the boy who entered the cave was not the same man who emerged. He had exchanged everyday speech for cosmic hearing, becoming the perfect receiver for the messages the universe was about to send. But this newfound gift did not come without a grim warning that began to form in his mind like a storm cloud. Looking towards the horizon where the sun was setting, he saw not only the beauty of the colors, but something that chilled his blood. An image began to overlay reality, showing shadows that did not belong to that land, moving towards his people. It was the first rift in time, a disturbing vision of what he would call the Iron Horizon, where everything he knew would be put to the test. In a snap, the world of warm colors was replaced by a cold, gray vision that the prophet called the Iron Horizon. He saw the future arrive not with silken steps, but with the rumble of unknown metals and the blinding glare of crosses that didn't seem made for healing. Gigantic ships like monsters of wood and cloth appeared on the horizon, tearing through the sea and bringing with them men whose eyes were the color of silver coins. It was the omen of an era where the earth would be sliced up and souls weighed on foreign scales. The vision was so clear that he could smell the acrid scent of gunpowder mixed with sea salt, something his people had never experienced before. He saw the great stone cities and leather libraries being swallowed by fire and planned oblivion. Those men brought a new magic, made of lead and iron, that did not ask permission from the spirits of the place to take root. The prophet's heart ached as he realized that the metal his people used to create beauty would be used by others to create chains and fences. It was a conflict between two realities, one that lived in harmony with the cycle of rain, and another that wanted to dominate time through brute force. The young man saw the lineages of kings being broken and ancestral languages being forbidden, replaced by sounds that had no connection to the African soil. The prophecies showed that the wisdom of the guardians of the word would be buried under layers of a history told only by the victors. It was a spiritual pain that spanned centuries, reaching even the tears of generations yet unborn. But amidst the chaos of iron, he noticed small points of light that refused to be extinguished, like embers hidden beneath the ashes of the invasion. These were the symbols and chants that, even under the lash, would continue to vibrate in the blood of those who crossed the ocean. He understood that the Iron Horizon was not the end of everything, but a trial by fire that would test the resilience of the African spirit. Wisdom would not die, it would merely change form, hiding in places where the invader would never think to look. Closing his eyes to push away that terrifying image, the prophet felt the weight of what he had to do to save what remained. He needed something tangible, an object that could channel his energy and anchor the memory of his people to solid ground. His hands searched among the village's treasures for sandalwood and obsidian to forge his instrument of power. Little did he know that this staff would be his only faithful guide when the shadows of the horizon finally touched the sand of the beach. With trembling but steady hands, the man began to carve his sandalwood and obsidian staff, uniting the scent of life with the black glass of the deep earth. The sandalwood brought the sweetness of resilience, while the obsidian, sharp as a razor, served to cut through the lies that the future would try to impose. Each carving in the wood was a prayer, a line of spiritual code that held the genealogy of the stars and the map of the hidden waters. That object was not a simple support for the body, but an antenna connected directly to the heart of the invisible world. They say that when the black stone tip struck the ground, the staff made the earth vibrate at a frequency that only the initiated could feel. He did not use the power to harm, but to create a protective shield around the memory of his people, anchoring wisdom in raw matter. The contrast between the light wood and the dark stone symbolized the perfect balance between the light of revelation and the necessary shadows of mystery. The staff became an extension of his own spine, an axis between the realm of men and the abode of the gods. Many curious onlookers approached to witness the hypnotic glow of the obsidian, feeling a strange peace or an inexplicable fear upon gazing at the object. The prophet explained, with just a look, that the power did not reside in the object itself, but in the intention of the one wielding it to guide the lost. The staff seemed to pulse in the same rhythm as its owner's breathing, shining intensely when visions of the future became heavier. It was an ancient technology, capable of reading the intentions of those who approached even before the first word was spoken. Through this instrument, he could feel the suffering of the trees and the lament of the stones that would be torn from their original places. Sandalwood exuded a calming perfume whenever tension increased, reminding everyone that the essence of the spirit is incorruptible, no matter how much the form is mistreated. Obsidian, on the other hand, reflected the face of whoever looked at it, but did not show the physical appearance, but rather the hidden truth in the depths of the eyes. It was the mirror of the soul, the silent judge of an era that was about to lose its moral compass. Even with such protection in hand, the prophet knew that the staff was only one piece of a much larger and older puzzle. He looked at the surrounding huts and realized that the way the houses were arranged was not by chance, but followed a larger plan. The staff pointed to the ground, revealing that true protection was drawn into the very layout of the village, in a geometry that spoke to the stars. There was a secret hidden in the shape of the houses and temples, a sacred geometry that served as an earthly mirror of the constellations. Indeed, what many people consider to be merely a collection of mud houses was, in fact, a star map drawn on the Earth's surface. The prophet walked among the buildings, pointing out how each curve of the walls and each angle of the entrances respected the sacred geometry of the villages. Not a single brick was placed haphazardly. Everything there vibrated in harmony with the proportions of the universe itself, creating a harmony that kept body and soul in perfect balance. It was as if the village were a great orchestra of stone and straw, playing silent music for the gods. They say that, viewed from above, the layout of the dwellings formed the exact pattern of constellations that modern science would only discover millennia later. This architecture of the spirit functioned as a filter, keeping what was bad outside and concentrating vital energy within the walls. The young leader showed that the circle, the triangle, and the spiral were not just beautiful shapes, but keys that opened portals of perception. Those who lived inside breathed a geometry that taught the order of the cosmos without needing to read a single line of paper. The mystery deepened even further when the sun shone on certain points during the solstice, illuminating hidden symbols that revealed the flow of underground waters. It was a technology of coexistence, where the human home was an extension of nature's temple, without divisions or walls of ego. The prophet explained that, as long as the people lived according to these sacred forms, their identity would be protected against any wind of change. It was proof that African intelligence was written in the very blueprint of the place where they walked. This connection between heaven and earth created an invisible protection that brought peace and abundance to families, even in times of drought. The construction rituals were true spiritual celebrations, where each stone was laid with a chant that sealed the pact between the community and the ancestors. The young man observed that this geometric order was what maintained the people's sanity in the face of life's uncertainties, a safe haven against chaos. It was a wisdom that didn't need grand monuments to be magnificent. It was in the right measure of comfort and spirituality. However, the prophet knew that all that physical harmony was at risk of being shattered by an event that would come from above, not from the earth. He sensed that a moment of total darkness was approaching, something that not even the most perfect geometry could completely prevent. His eyes turned to the sky, foreseeing the day when the sun would be devoured by the moon at midday, bringing a grim warning. It would be the eclipse of the soul, a cosmic sign that the times of light were about to give way to an unprecedented trial. Indeed, the day the sun disappeared at midday was etched in the memory of the stones, as if the sky itself had closed its eyes to avoid seeing the pain to come. The eclipse of the soul was not merely a natural phenomenon, but a sign that the world's balance hung by a thread, plunging the earth into a frigid twilight. In that instant of total darkness, the prophet felt a chill that did not come from the wind, but from the weight of the ages about to collide. It was the definitive warning that the time of abundance and clarity was being devoured by a shadow that came from afar. They say that while the birds fell silent and the flowers closed in fright, the young leader remained standing, his eyes fixed on the black circle that occupied the place of the sun. He saw in that remaining crown of light the symbol of a resistance that would need to be nurtured in the darkness, within every African heart. The eclipse was a mirror of the imminent fall of great civilizations, a revelation that libraries and temples would be put to the test by fire and greed. It was as if the cosmos were preparing the spirit of the people to traverse a long tunnel of forced forgetfulness. Fear gripped many, but the prophet used that moment to teach that light is only truly valued by those who know the depths of darkness. He explained that even when the sun disappears, it doesn't cease to exist. It merely hides to test our faith in the morning to come. That momentary darkness served to reveal the stars that the intense brightness of the day usually extinguishes, showing paths and constellations that only those initiated into pain could navigate. It was a baptism of shadow that forged a new layer of protection in the collective soul of his people. As the light slowly returned, tinging the horizon with strange and mystical colors, the silence that followed was deeper than that of any ordinary night. The people felt that the world was no longer the same, and that a page of history was being violently turned by the hand of destiny. The prophet, his face bathed in the returning warmth of the sun, knew that there was no turning back now, and that the time to prepare for the unseen had arrived. Each shadow cast on the ground seemed to carry the weight of a secret that needed to be kept under lock and key. But to cross this approaching spiritual desert, he needed more than just visions. He needed to seal a pact with those who came before. He turned to the roots of the earth and the voices that dwell in the wind, seeking an alliance that transcended life and death. It was time to forge the pact with the ancestors, a promise of blood and memory that would ensure that the essence of Africa would never be completely erased, even under the weight of the chains. Indeed, the prophet knew that when the storm arrives, the leaves may fly, but it is the root that keeps the tree standing. He knelt upon the red earth and invoked the pact with the ancestors, an alliance that binds the present to the past with threads that no one can cut. It was not a conversation of loose words, but a commitment of blood and smoke, where he promised to be the guardian of memory while the world outside tried to erase every trace of his history. At that moment, he felt the weight of thousands of invisible hands touching his shoulders, giving him the strength needed to endure what was to come. The pact demanded that wisdom not remain solely in books which can be burned, but that it be planted in the rhythm of drums and the sparkle in children's eyes. He understood that the ancients never truly die. They merely change planes to observe how we care for what has been left to us. The promise was clear. As long as there was someone to tell the story, the essence of Africa would continue to pulsate, even if hidden under a cloak of secrecy. It was an invisible resistance, a spiritual war where the main weapon was fidelity to origins and respect for those who had already departed. Imagine the strength of knowing you are never alone, even when the enemy seems to be all around you with their iron weapons. The prophet explained that ancestors are like the stars that guide navigators. They are there even when the clouds of forgetfulness try to cover the sky. This pact created a shield that no chain could break, for true freedom begins within the spirit that recognizes its own lineage. It was the life insurance of an entire people, an inheritance not measured in coins, but in dignity and connection to the sacred. During the ritual, the smell of burning herbs and the sound of earth being pounded created an atmosphere where time seemed to stand still. He saw the faces of kings, queens, and peasants who had shaped the continent with sweat and magic, all breathing the breath of continuity towards him. The pact sealed his destiny as the final link in a chain that could not be broken, no matter the cost. From then on, his every step was guided by a wisdom that was not his own, but that of an entire civilization that refused to be swept under the rug of official history. But this pact brought revelations that went far beyond the borders of his own land, showing paths that connected his people to distant places. He began to have visions of immense sands and gigantic constructions that pointed to the same sky he loved so much. His spiritual footprints began to trace paths that led directly to Egypt, revealing that African wisdom was a river that fed many banks. A forbidden connection was being revealed, showing that the knowledge of his people had left deep marks in the sands of the Nile. Indeed, the prophet began to see that the paths of his people did not end there in the village, but extended like veins of gold to the lands of the north. His footprints in Egypt revealed a truth that many would try to hide. The wisdom of the pyramids and temples of the Nile drank from the same source as the waters of the heart of Africa. He saw in the hieroglyphs the same rhythm of his drums and the same geometry that he had drawn in the dust of his own backyard. It was a forbidden connection, an invisible thread that showed that Black Africa was the mother of all the science and spirituality that the world so admired from afar. They say the young leader could read the stars just like the pharaohs, understanding that knowledge travels with the wind and settles where it finds fertile ground. He realized that the Egyptian deities had familiar faces, voices that echoed the prayers of their own people, but dressed in the silks of imperial power. It was a giant mirror where he saw his own soul reflected in stone monuments that defied time and death. Egypt was not an isolated mystery, but the most brilliant chapter of a book written by African hands long before the first Iron Empire appeared on the horizon. On this spiritual journey, the prophet understood that sacred knowledge had been carried downstream like a seed that would bear fruit for all humanity. He saw the priests of the Nile guarding secrets about the soul and the stars that had first been whispered in the jungles and savannas of the south. It was a web of wisdom that united the continent, showing that Africa was never a place of isolated peoples, but a vibrant network of exchange and mysticism. This revelation brought immense pride, but also a warning. Those who dominate history try to erase the origin to steal the credit for creation. The young man demonstrated that the Egyptian symbols were, in fact, protective tools that his people had already used in much older rituals. He spoke of resurrection, the weight of the heart, and the afterlife as concepts born in the womb of the deep, dark earth. Egypt was the showcase, but the treasure shop was hidden in the interior of the continent, protected by silence and geography. Touching the ground, he felt the vibration of invisible tunnels that connected the spirit of his village to the secret chambers of Giza, uniting the glorious past with the future of resistance. However, this grandeur brought an immediate danger, for the name of the one who knew too much needed to be protected from the envy of the conquerors. The prophet began to notice that, as his fame grew, the outside world tried to label him and capture his essence in words he did not recognize. He felt that his power was linked to something that could not be written on paper or engraved in stone for anyone to see. The secret of the forgotten name began to manifest itself, showing that the true identity of a sacred leader is his most powerful weapon and therefore the most persecuted. Indeed, the prophet quickly realized that in the game of power, what has no name cannot be tamed or sold. He understood that the secret of the forgotten name was his greatest defense, for the invaders who came from the Iron Horizon could only destroy what they could label. While official records attempted to erase his existence from the chronicles of leather and paper, his true name continued to vibrate in the hearts of those who had faith. It was a sacred survival strategy, to become invisible to the eyes of greed in order to remain eternal in the mouth of hope. They say his name carried a frequency capable of making seeds sprout faster and enemies lose their way in the dunes. Therefore, the elders decided that this sound would no longer be spoken aloud, but only whispered in the ears of new initiates at nightfall. The name became a spiritual password, a code to access a part of African history that no colonial library could ever catalogue. By being forgotten by the history of the Iron Men, it ensured that its essence remained pure and untouched by time. Imagine the confusion of the explorers who tried to find the king or the sorcerer of those lands and found only silence and enigmatic smiles. They searched for someone with titles and crowns without understanding that the true leader was a force of nature that needed no records to exist. The prophet laughed inwardly, knowing that the more they tried to erase him, the more he became part of the wind, the rain, and the very earth they trod upon. The oblivion imposed from the outside became the freedom conquered from within, protecting the core of ancestral wisdom. This hidden name was like a deep root that, even when the tree is cut down, holds the promise that life will return in full force at the right time. The young master taught that the identity of a people is not in what others say about them, but in what they keep in the silence of their hearts. Every time someone tried to rewrite the history of Africa, the secret of the forgotten name acted as a shield, keeping the truth protected in a dimension that hatred cannot reach. It was living proof that what is truly sacred does not need permission to be eternal. But while the name remained hidden, the body and spirit needed movement to avoid stagnating in the face of the oppression knocking at the door. The prophet began to teach the young people that the body can be a temple in motion, capable of expressing truths that the tongue was forbidden to speak. He saw that resistance would not come only from weapons, but from a sacred choreography that united heaven and earth in a collective trance. The dance of invisible resistance was being born, a way of fighting that the eyes of the oppressor would see only as a celebration, without imagining the power of war that lay within. Indeed, the prophet understood that when chains try to bind the feet, it is necessary to make the soul dance so that the body does not become a prison. He began to teach the dance of invisible resistance, a series of movements that seemed like mere celebration to the unsuspecting, but which were in fact rituals of defense and connection. Each step on the ground was a blow against oppression, and each swing of the arms was a design in the air that invoked the protection of ancestral winds. The oppressor looked and saw only celebration, without suspecting that an army of unbreakable spirits was being trained there. They say the rhythm of the drum was the secret code that guided the movements, changing according to the presence of danger or the need for healing. The prophet showed that, upon entering the trance of the dance, man became an element of nature, impossible to capture or harm through hatred. That sacred choreography was an escape map and a combat manual, all disguised by the sweat and smile of someone who knew what they were doing. It was the intelligence of the body overcoming the brute force of leaden weapons, a technology of freedom that traveled in the sway of the hips. On full moon nights, the sound of the earth being beaten by bare feet echoed like thunder, making the invaders tremble in their tents without knowing why. The young leader explained that dance was the way to keep their spines straight and their memories alive, even when the world around them tried to bend them. It was a language without words, but full of meaning, where each gesture told the story of creation and the promise of final victory. Through dance, the people were able to banish fear and recover the dignity that they tried to steal from them with each new sunny day. This resistance was not merely physical, but a way of maintaining the village's spiritual frequency high, creating a protective bubble that evil could not penetrate. The prophet saw that joy, when used as a weapon, is capable of disarming even the most cruel of soldiers. For hatred does not understand how someone can be free, even amidst pain. Dance became our sacred grammar, the African way of saying that life is a flow that no one can interrupt. It was proof that our culture is a flame, that the more they try to stifle it, the more heat and light it produces. But the prophet's vision went beyond the movement of bodies. He also saw through the surface of the waters that shimmered under the moonlight. He carried with him the water mirror, an object where time liquefied and revealed what was hidden behind the sea's horizon. Looking at that reflection, he saw not only his own face, but the destiny of millions who would be carried away, crossing the salty abyss. What he saw in that water was at once a terrible warning and a hope that would transcend generations in lands he would never set foot on. Indeed, the prophet approached a carved stone basin and poured the purest water, creating what he called the mirror of water. Looking at that unshaking surface, he saw not only his own face, but the trail of millions of his children crossing the ocean in ships of sorrow. He saw currents that gleamed like serpent scales, but he also saw that the soul of Africa was like the sea itself, too deep to be captured. It was a breathtaking vision, showing that even far from home, African blood would continue to boil with the same force as the midday sun. They say the master would plunge his hands into that water and feel the salt of the tears of those yet to be born in distant and strange lands. He realized that the destiny of his people was to spread like the foam of the waves, carrying the seed of wisdom wherever the wind blew. The mirror of water showed cities of stone being erected by calloused hands, but moved by hearts that still beat to the rhythm of the village drums. It was a liquid mystery, revealing that physical distance was nothing compared to the connection that the spirit can maintain through the waters. Imagine the pain and pride of seeing your culture become the root of new worlds, even if it was born from the soil of injustice and sweat. The prophet saw that music, faith, and the way of smiling would be the tools his descendants would use to avoid madness in the solitude of exile. He breathed on the water and saw the divinities crossing the Atlantic, hidden in the folds of clothing and the secrets of the mind. That vision was his solace, the certainty that Africa was not a geographical place, but a state of mind that no one could confiscate. The young leader explained to anyone who would listen that water has memory and that it would be the way back home, even if only in dreams. He saw the ports of the future full of people who, even without knowing their grandparents' names, would feel a shiver down their spine upon hearing an ancient lullaby. The mirror revealed that ancestral wisdom was like a river flowing to the sea. It may change form, but it never ceases to be water. It was a lesson in resilience, showing that the African people are like the ocean. You can take a bucket of water, but you can never take the sea from its place. However, such clarity about the future began to attract envious and fearful glances from those who wanted to dominate the present. The prophet felt the air around him growing heavy, as if the horizon were closing in to hunt him like valuable prey. He realized that the shadows of the world outside wanted not only gold or land, but the brilliance emanating from his eyes. The pursuit of shadows was beginning, where sacred knowledge would have to hide in caves and silences to avoid being devoured by greed. Indeed, the prophet sensed the tightening siege when the footsteps in the woods ceased to be those of animals and became those of heavy boots. The shadow pursuit came not only with firearms, but with a fierce attempt to silence the voice that awakened consciences. Those who sought absolute control feared the man who did not bow down, seeing in his wisdom a greater threat than any army of spears. He became a ghost in his own land, moving among the trees as if he were part of the wind itself, always one step ahead of anyone who tried to capture the brilliance of his soul. They say the invaders' fear was so great that they began spreading stories that the prophet was a dark sorcerer trying to transform his light into something terrifying. But the people knew that his true magic was the truth, and so they protected him with a silence that not even torture could break. He spent his nights in caves that held the breath of the earth, where the shadows on the walls seemed to dance to distract his pursuers. It was a game of cat and mouse, where the master used nature itself as a shield, confusing the compasses and the hearts of those who came with hatred. The young leader saw that his enemies were blinded by greed, and that no matter how many villages they burned, they would never find what they truly sought. He explained to his followers that persecution is the fate of all who carry a torch, in a world that prefers the darkness of ignorance. Each time a shadow tried to suffocate him, he responded with an act of kindness or a word of power that disarmed the younger soldiers. He did not fight against flesh and blood, but against the idea that one man can own another man or his own creation. In this constant flight, he learned that the spirit cannot be caged and that true freedom resides where no one can touch. He saw the invaders digging up the earth in search of gold, unaware that the greatest treasure lay in the songs they tried to ban. The persecution ultimately forged an even more resilient man, transforming the prophet into a living symbol that resistance is, above all, an act of patience and faith. He knew that the time of shadows would pass, but the light he protected needed to be recorded in a way that fire could not consume. And so it was that, between one cave and another, under the light of small resin torches, he began to prepare what would be his most dangerous legacy for the oppressors. He did not use paper which rots nor stone which breaks, but chose something that carried life within itself to hold his words. The manuscript of skin and blood was emerging, a sacred work where each letter was a pact of survival and each symbol a promise of return. This mysterious object would become the greatest nightmare of those who tried to erase African history, for it contained secrets that not even time dared to touch. Indeed, the prophet knew that what is written with ink can be erased, but what is engraved on leather and in life becomes eternal. He gave life to the manuscript of skin and blood, a sacred piece that did not use ordinary parchment, but skins treated with herbs that preserved the energy of those who touched them. Each symbol there was not just a letter, it was a portal that guarded the laws of the universe and the true history of a people that official books would try to bury. They say that by running one's fingers over the reliefs of the manuscript, it was possible to feel the pulse of Africa itself, protecting the truth against the decay of time. Imagine a book that glows in the darkness of caves and seems to whisper when danger approaches the right hands. The master didn't just write glorious tales of the past there, but left the keys so that future generations could regain control of their own destinies. The manuscript spoke of plant medicine, the secrets of metals, and navigation by the stars, all disguised in parables that only a free heart could decipher. It was the testament of a civilization that, foreseeing its own silencing, decided to hide its intellectual gold in an armor of mystery and rituals. Many have tried for centuries to find this object, but the manuscript had the power to become invisible or appear as a piece of old leather to those who did not have the eyes of their soul open. The prophet taught that the skin used in the book symbolized human resilience, and the blood represented the lineage that never breaks, even under the lash. It was a living work, growing as new revelations were made and new sufferings were overcome by the people. Whoever guarded this secret carried the weight of an entire empire in their hands, knowing that this was physical proof that Africa was never a no-man's land. The power of this manuscript was so great that it began to attract the attention of beings who lived beyond known borders, beings who also watched over the sky. The prophet began to receive signs that his revelations were in tune with knowledge that came from far away, from stars that the common eye could barely distinguish. He saw that the destiny of his people was tied to the firmament in a way that few cultures on earth would dare to imagine. It was a bridge of wisdom that connected the heart of his valley to the profound mysteries of a people who looked upwards with the same reverence. This celestial connection led the young leader to seek contact with the wise men who lived on the distant cliffs, known for their extraordinary vision. He realized he was not alone in the task of mapping the cosmos and protecting the sacred history of the continent. The connection with the Dogon was being revealed, a chilling parallel between the prophet's prophecies and the ancient knowledge of stars invisible to the naked eye. The mysteries ceased to be merely terrestrial and began to encompass the very fabric of space, showing that Africa had always had its feet on the ground, but its mind in the most remote galaxies. Indeed, the prophet discovered that his people's gaze had always been capable of seeing beyond what the sun reveals, reaching the darkness where the wisest stars hide. Upon encountering the sages of the cliffs, he sealed the connection with the Dogon, realizing that they all drank from the same stellar source that flows directly from Sirius. They spoke of a time when the masters of the sky visited the Earth, leaving maps that showed not roads, but paths between galaxies. It was a science of absolute precision, guarded for centuries in deep caves, proving that Africa knew the secrets of the vacuum long before iron telescopes existed. It is said that the prophet was amazed to see that the Dogon people already knew about Sirius's companion star, the one that is as heavy as metal and invisible to the human eye. He understood that his mission was to protect this astronomical knowledge, because whoever knows the origin of the stars will never accept being enslaved on Earth. This connection showed that African intelligence was attuned to the pulse of the universe, treating the constellations as close relatives and not as cold points in the sky. The celestial mystery was a mirror of the inner grandeur that each man and woman carried, an inheritance that came from distant worlds to inhabit the earthen soil. The journey through the cliffs revealed that the rituals and masks were not merely folklore, but high-tech spiritual tools for maintaining contact with the cosmos. The master saw that, while the world outside was lost in wars over scraps of land, his people kept their eyes on the infinite, knowing that life is a cycle that traverses space. This alliance between the prophet and the guardians of Sirius created a shield of knowledge that the invaders could never decipher or steal. It was the final proof that official history was completely wrong about what they called the backwardness of African civilizations. Imagine the power of knowing you are part of a lineage of space navigators who use the spirit as a vessel. The prophet taught that each person has within them a bit of the dust of those distant stars, which makes us divine by nature and right. He saw that the connection with Sirius was the anchor that would prevent Africa from losing its soul during the centuries of darkness to come. It was a truth so powerful that it made the fear of death disappear, giving way to a profound understanding of the eternity of consciousness. But in order for this light to traverse the ages without being extinguished along the way, a very high price would have to be paid by the prophet himself. He felt that the cycle of his physical life was reaching the point of mutation, where the flesh must withdraw so that the idea may become immortal. He looked at the iron horizon, which was now closer than ever, and realized that his time of walking on the sand was ending. The time for the final sacrifice was approaching, the moment when he would accept his destiny so that the seed of prophecy would germinate in the DNA of all his descendants. Indeed, the prophet felt the air change its flavor, announcing that the time for hiding was over and the time for becoming eternal had arrived. The final sacrifice was not a defeat at the hands of the enemy, but a conscious choice of one who knows that life is a cycle that renews itself in the blood of the earth. He surrendered not out of weakness, but so that his story could be told for centuries to come, serving as a seed for a resistance that no weapon could silence. The moment his body touched the ground for the last time, a muffled rumble echoed across the continent, as if Africa itself were holding his breath within the mountains. They say that, before departing, he whispered his last visions into the ear of the wind, so that they would travel beyond borders and seas. His sacrifice sealed the commitment that African truth would not die with him, but would live on in the DNA of every man and woman who carried the pride of that origin. He transformed his last breath into a melody of hope, ensuring that his people would find the strength to rise again, even after the worst storms. Physical death was merely the portal for him to become the great ancestor, the invisible guide who walks alongside those who fight for dignity. Imagine the shock of his pursuers when they realized that, by silencing the man, they had unleashed a legend that would spread like wildfire. They wanted to extinguish the prophet, but ended up multiplying his voice in thousands of other hearts that awakened to their own greatness. The sacrifice proved that the idea of freedom is far more dangerous than any leader of flesh and blood, for it cannot be imprisoned or executed. The master departed with a smile on his lips, knowing that the seed he planted was made of a light that the iron horizon could never completely extinguish. It was a moment of profound pain, but imbued with a mystical beauty that even made the enemy soldiers bow their heads in a sign of respect they couldn't explain. The land where he fell became sacred, a point of power where time bends and the past meets the future in a silent conversation. The prophet ceased to be a person and became the spirit of resistance itself, a force that would traverse generations without losing its vigor. He knew his work was done and that Africa, though wounded, now possessed a spiritual compass to guide it through the darkness. But what the oppressors didn't imagine was that this force would cross the salty waters to germinate in soils far from home. The prophet saw that his sacrifice would resonate in the Americas, manifesting itself in new cults, new arts, and a will to live that nothing could destroy. The echoes of his last words crossed the ocean hidden in the sway of the waves, ready to awaken in the courtyards, churches, and street corners of a new world. The prophecy was only beginning to show its true face, revealing that Africa is a tree whose branches provide shade for the entire world. Indeed, what seemed to be the end was only the beginning of a journey that not even the heaviest currents could hold back. The resonance in the Americas happened like a silent miracle, where the spirit of the prophet crossed the sea, hidden in the sweat and prayers of those who were forcibly taken. He manifested himself in the sound of the drums, in the taste of palm oil, and in the courage of those who, even far from home, refused to forget where they came from. It was Africa rebuilding itself on foreign soil, transforming the pain of exile into a new form of spiritual power that would make the new world tremble with emotion. They say the prophet's words were heard again in mixed languages, in chants that spoke of Orishas, Vodans, and ancestors who never abandoned their children. Where there was oppression, his seed sprouted like a flower of resistance, creating quilombos of mind and spirit that no slave catcher could capture. It was a connection that needed no wires, only the vibration that came from the heart of those who stamped their feet on the ground with the certainty that their lineage was divine. The wisdom that was born in the Forgotten Valley now nourished the souls of millions, proving that Africa is a fire that no one can extinguish. In the capoeira circles and on altars covered in flowers, the prophet walked invisibly, giving strength to the arms and clarity to the thoughts of his descendants. He showed that true freedom begins when we recognize our own worth, even when the whole world tries to say otherwise. This resonance created an unbreakable identity, a shield made of rhythm and faith that protected African culture against total erasure. Every time a black person stood up to demand respect, it was the echo of that last prophecy gaining body and voice in a land that was still learning to be human. It was fascinating to see how the wisdom of the stars and the secret of the herbs adapted to new biomes, keeping their essence alive under new guises. The prophet smiled from the other side of the veil, seeing that his visions were correct. African blood was the mortar that held together American civilization, even if it refused to admit it. The spirituality he so strongly defended became the refuge and weapon of a people who learned to read destiny in leaves and cowrie shells. Africa was not just a continent, it was alive in every gesture of resistance and in every smile that defied the sadness of captivity. But the time for hiding is coming to an end, and the prophet foresaw that a new awakening would shake the foundations of the modern world. He saw the moment when his children would look back at their own roots, not with shame, but with the thirst of those seeking a source of crystal clear water. The awakening of the stone lions was approaching, the day when hidden knowledge would resurface to restore the balance of humanity. It was the call for African truth to emerge from the shadows and take its rightful place as the guiding light for our future. Indeed, the time of forced silence is coming to an end, and the prophet predicted that the old ice statues of official history would begin to crack. The awakening of the stone lions is the moment when modern youth and sages turn their eyes to the past, not as one looks at a museum, but as one seeks a weapon for the future. His visions showed that technology and spirituality would once again join hands, revealing that Africa was never behind, but rather waiting for the world to be ready for its wisdom. It is a roar that begins quietly on social media and in universities, but vibrates with the force of an ancestral thunder that no one can ignore anymore. They say the stone lions that guarded the entrances to forgotten kingdoms are beginning to breathe again through each new archaeological discovery. Each recovered artifact and each DNA test is like a shock of reality that disproves centuries of lies about a people's capabilities. The prophet saw that African truth would emerge from within, restoring the pride of those who were taught to hate themselves for generations. It is a revolution of the mind, where the thrones that were toppled begin to be rebuilt within the consciousness of each descendant of that red earth. Imagine the power of a generation that discovers their ancestors mapped the stars and mastered metallurgy when the rest of the world still lived in caves. The master saw that this clarity would bring a new politics, a new art, and above all, a new way of dealing with nature and with others. He taught us that awakening is not just about the past, but about using this hidden power to heal the wounds of a world lost in greed and ego. The lions stand tall, and they carry with them the memory of a time when life was treated as something sacred in every detail. This new era of consciousness causes the prophet's secrets to cease being forbidden and become the necessary guide for humanity's survival. The young leader smiles from the depths of time, seeing that the iron horizon is finally being melted by the heat of a sun that never stopped shining. The connection with Sirius and the geometry of the villages regain meaning for those seeking a more balanced way of life, connected to the whole. The awakening is collective and unstoppable, for a truth with the strength of an entire continent behind it cannot be kept in the shadows. However, this epic journey leaves us with one last lesson, a golden ending that ties together all the loose ends of this sacred story. The prophet leaves us with the legacy of eloquent silence, the understanding that African truth does not need to shout to be heard, for it is already written in everything we are. When we look in the mirror today, we see not only faces, but the trace of a wisdom that survived fire, water, and iron. The conclusion of this prophecy is not a final point, but an ellipsis that invites us to discover what still sleeps beneath the sands of time. Indeed, in the end, the prophet's greatest victory was not avoiding the storm, but ensuring that the light of Africa knew how to swim through it. The legacy of eloquent silence is proof that what is truly sacred does not need grand monuments to exist. It survives in the way we walk, in the strength of our smiles, and in the wisdom passed down from father to son in a glance. It is a presence that does not shout, but fills every space in our culture, reminding us that the root that sustains us is much deeper than any official history book dares to tell. They say the prophet's silence became the loudest voice in the world, echoing in every heartbeat that seeks justice and truth. He taught us that memory is a territory no one can colonize if we keep our inner flame burning. Looking at the legacy left by this forgotten master, we realize that Africa is not only the cradle of humanity, but its brightest and most conscious future. Silence has now given way to an eloquence that overflows in the arts, sciences, and spirituality, once again embracing the world with affection and authority. Imagine the power of carrying within oneself a secret that took millennia to be revealed, but which has always been there, right under our noses. His legacy invites us to be the new guardians of the word, protecting our essence against the distractions of a world that has forgotten how to listen to the wind. The prophet left no gold or silver, but something far more valuable, the certainty that we are made of stardust and the blood of kings and queens. This awareness is the key that opens all doors and undoes all the chains that the iron horizon tried to impose on us. In this breathtaking conclusion, we understand that the story of the last African prophet does not end in a tomb, but multiplies in each of us who choose to honor our own ancestry. He is the wind that blows across the savannas and the brilliance that reflects in the waters of the oceans that unite the continents. The legacy is a call to action, a poetic provocation so that we never again accept less than the greatness that was destined for us from the beginning of time. The hidden wisdom is now shared light, an inheritance that shines for all who have the courage to see. But as we close this chapter, a question lingers. If a single man could hold so much power in silence, what will we be able to do now that our voices have united? The mysteries of Africa are like a bottomless ocean, and each dive brings us a new pearl of knowledge that challenges everything we thought we knew. The time of forgetting is over, and what remains is the eternal journey of discovering who we truly are and what still sleeps beneath the golden sands of time. The prophecy has been fulfilled. The lions have awakened, and the story is finally being told by the one who never ceased to be its master. Just as the sun always returns to kiss the reddish soil of the savannah, the truth about the last African prophet rises today to illuminate the shadows of our time. This journey has shown us that the history of Africa was not written only in books that can be burned, but was engraved in the DNA of each of us and whispered by the winds that cross generations. The prophet's silence was not a sign of defeat, but a seed of patience, awaiting the moment when we would be ready to honor the greatness of our true roots. Many mysteries still lie dormant beneath the golden sands and at the bottom of the sacred waters, waiting for courageous hearts, unafraid to rediscover their own brilliance. May this revelation not be merely a tale you have heard, but a call for you to walk with your head held high, knowing that you carry within you the legacy of a civilization that mapped the stars and understood the infinite. Africa is the beginning, the middle, and the future of a humanity that desperately needs to rediscover its soul. If this story touched your spirit and shed light on your understanding of the past, don't let that flame die out here. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay with us because there are still deep secrets and forgotten civilizations whose voices need to be heard again. Remember, the time of forgetting is over, and now we are the ones who keep the word. Until the next ancestral revelation,